Hello, ELIC 30. This is Michael, and we are in How to Be Human, An Autistic Man's Guide to Life by Jory Fleming. And we are continuing in Chapter 5, Language Barriers, beginning on page 112, this grayed out portion. Since language is a struggle, Jory and I discussed what communication strategies are helpful to him so that he can better process language. But while the suggestions are Jory specific, they are universal enough that they could apply to other people with language processing issues, even those not on the autism spectrum. Jory, use observation and variety. I respond well to both observation and variety. If you're talking about an idea and I can see the idea in action, that's good. Let me observe it directly. For example, if you are trying to tell me how to use a new type of vegetable slicer or some other kitchen tool, if you can't let me see it directly, then help me triangulate it by talking about it in multiple ways. Explain to me how you visualize something, and then also tell me about it. That way, I will have two different ways of trying to translate. Using more than one method helps me reduce errors or misinterpretation. 2. Use repetition. I'm definitely helped by repeating ideas, concepts, statements, and directions. Regardless of what the idea or concept is, I still have to translate it into Jory beads to use it internally. If I can cross-check it a little bit or hear it a few times, then there's slightly less of a chance of miscommunication. 3. Avoid dual meanings. I have a lot of difficulty with phrases that either have a dual meaning or where the majority of the meaning comes from emotions. Phrases such as, he can't help himself, I'm not buying it, or it doesn't hurt to. Otherwise, I'm going to miss the full meaning because I don't have the context which most people have, whether that's emotional or something else. Or at least, if you inform me of that meaning, then it goes a really long way to helping me interpret it. For me, not only are the connotations of words difficult, but also the denotations are difficult. I think a lot of denotations actually require subconscious processing, and I don't understand and probably won't get sarcasm at all. Okay, pause here for a moment. Okay, denotations, we've talked about this briefly before. Denotations are the literal dictionary meaning of a word. He's saying understanding just the meanings of words is difficult for him. Connotations are the subjective quality of some words, whether if a word has a positive, or an expression has a positive connotation or a negative connotation, that's separate from the actual literal meaning of the word, and that's very difficult for him. And in fact, a lot of people, even native English speakers, sometimes have difficulty in grasping the connotations, the connotative meaning of certain words. Continuing on. Number 4, avoid assumptions. Leaving things unsaid is very hard for me. That tends to happen when it's about a common cultural thing. Idioms and figures of speech often test me because I won't automatically recognize it as a figure of speech, and I'll have to process that. Bent out of shape, speak of the devil, 2 peas in a pod. Phrases along those lines have been difficult for me to understand. If a person uses a lot of phrases like that, I might miss the overall picture. If there's only 1 or 2, it's okay. 5. Use words, not body language. If you rely on body language or gestures, and especially if those things are conveying the opposite meaning from what you're saying, I won't pick up on it. Don't communicate with lots of non-word signals that I am supposed to pick up on. Okay. Pause here for a moment. Now, this is very interesting because with most speakers, most users of language, the body language, the facial expressions, gestures, the nonverbal things that a person does are more powerful and communicate more effectively and powerfully than words. But he is saying that for him, it's the opposite. If you say that you're happy, but you have a sad expression on your face, he'll expect that you're happy because that's what you said. This fits into the context of inferences. Inferring meaning is very difficult for him because it's not directly verbal. Continuing on. Number 6, avoid speaking too fast. Rapid fire speech is something that I have trouble with. Either speak at a reasonable pace or pause for a few seconds every now and again to let me catch up in case I'm still processing. Knowing that every conversation is energy draining, how does Jory make the most of the conversations that he has? What, for him, is a worthwhile conversation? What might it be for any of us? LW. What do you like to talk about? Jory. One thing I don't like is small talk. I don't like to talk about the weather. I like to talk about nerdy, intellectual stuff. I'm a big news follower, so any news of the day will interest me. But I've found conversations about people's backgrounds or why they think the way they do based on their prior experiences to be very interesting. What differentiates those things from small talk is that there is some value being shared. It doesn't have to be vulnerable or personally revealing, but I feel like it's a different kind of conversation because you walk away from that learning something. LW. And who is worth having a conversation with? Jory. I don't want to hang out with people who are not nice, because there is definitely a sense that who you surround yourself with helps you grow in some sense. I wouldn't want to be in an environment all the time where people are super cynical or hate everyone. I generally find a wide range of people pretty interesting, as long as they meet the basic criteria of not being a terrible person and talking at least some of the time about something other than the weather or what they ate for breakfast. I do enjoy hanging out with people that I know, but usually less so at bars or any party type atmosphere, because those environments are not as easy for me to be in. It also comes down to the fact that a party with alcohol will reduce everybody's intelligence level slightly. Although at Oxford, weirdly enough, there are all sorts of intellectual parties. Generally speaking, I've found that I'm very bad at initiating activities. So I'm very bad at bringing people together. But if people are getting together, and if I'm not already doing something, usually I'll go, unless I'm especially tired. When my course mates organized something at a coffee shop, if I'm not busy, I'll stop by for 30 minutes. 1 to 2 hours is my typical limit, unless we're doing something specific like playing board games, or there's extra structured engagement or a discussion. I go weekly to the chapel lunch club for theological matters for close to 2 hours. That kind of discussion is fine, and I could probably stay a little bit longer. But if it's an event at the graduate student lounge where they're having a bar night, I might spend 30 minutes. Paradoxically, Jory and I spent quite a few minutes discussing what he finds so onerous about small talk. But as he spoke, and I listened, there was also a part of my mind that began to wonder how often many of us miss out on more meaningful conversations because we immerse ourselves in narrow, more superficial topics. Or how often do people try to escape from a tedious companion by, in essence, saying, "So tell me more about yourself," or "Tell me more about what you think about this." Jory. When people ask about a standard set of things like work, or the weather, or what you did on the weekend, it's less that they are interested in what is being said than in simply keeping the conversation going. I find that pretty difficult, to be honest, and pretty draining. Continually keeping up with draining conversation where there's nothing to keep me engaged is not impossible, but it's hard. And the longer it goes on, the harder it is. I'm good at small talk as long as it doesn't last more than 10 minutes. But that's bad if you're having a dinner with someone and the small talk lasts for 2 hours. That's where I run into a lot of problems. Sometimes I may come off as just not very good at conversations, because after a while I'll have to stop and recharge a little bit. If it's not going to move out of small talk, I'll at least ask some questions so the other person or the group can hopefully talk about it for a long period of time. And that's the end of chapter 5.